Um, so Sina and I, we had a talk before about what we want to talk and what would be interesting. And we came up with this wonderful title, How Does Design Changes the Research and How Does Research Changes the Design? And one of the topics we had in our company when we're doing voice user interfaces for our clients, so we're having the same problem, we're actually not working with the user, we're working with our clients and always having a hard time to understand their users. And so the beginning of that, I would like to turn that question around because when I was thinking about it today and when I heard Abby now, I was thinking, I think the first question is, how does the research influence the design? What exactly is research and what are we often dealing with when we're doing research? Research can be the professional version like Abby does. She goes in there, she get the metrics, she knows how to prove things and all of that. And you have it on paper, you have it black and white, and there's nothing somebody can say against it, but you can make them curious and say, how did you get there and what did you ask and what does the numbers mean and how does that influence my design? So that's that one part. But I think most companies are starting out with an idea. Somebody goes on in the street and thinks like, oh, I had this problem again today, and talks to their friends and they have the same problem. And then they start talking about how they maybe could solve that problem and they come up with an idea and then they suddenly have a prototype and suddenly they're a startup and suddenly they have a product on the market and suddenly that product is done. And they think, yeah, it's a great product and it's really, really working. Until a user comes and says, you know what? I at the beginning, I wanted to get from A to B and you gave me a car, which is great. It brought me from A to B. But do you remember I wanted to get to B so I could survive? So this car is too slow. It has to be faster. So, and that cycle goes on and we keep on doing that prototype again and again. And our clients, they don't see that as a prototype. They see that as the product, our sole product. And we keep on inventing it and keep on asking our users, how do you like this product now? And they say, yeah, I maybe don't like this, I maybe don't like that. And we think, okay, you know what, you said it's too slow. Let's change the engine, let's make it a little quicker, and then bring it back on the market as a version 2. Version 2 comes on the market, people buy it, and suddenly people start saying, yeah, but you know what, it's kind of expensive, isn't it? I mean, yeah, it's fast and it looks beautiful, but it's really expensive. But remember, we had to do it more expensive because the engine is more expensive because they said they wanted it faster, but now it's too expensive. What are we going to do now? And all along, this product evolves and evolves, and suddenly we have a bike. I don't know why we got there and how we got there, but we followed this research. And so that research changed our design again and again and again. And I believe, and this is just a hypothesis, I believe that because we're following all those researches, we keep on forgetting more and more how we even came to the beginning of that problem. So, and that's what's happening with a lot of our clients. They come and say, we want a voice user interface and we want our users to be able to talk to Alexa or Google or whatever assistant is there. Oh, even better, you know what? We have the platform. We want the users to have the brand user interface like our own. We want our platform. We want the user to speak to our own device and no Google, no Alexa, no nothing, because users hate that. They really do hate that. They don't want to talk to Alexa. They don't want to give their data to Google, and they probably don't want to talk to anything else that's huge and big on the market and outside from Germany. So we do that. And somebody asks, why is it not working? And we start to research again. And all of that time, every time we go through that cycle of design process, we get farther away from the very beginning of where this whole idea started, when those two guys met on the street and were talking about the problem they had on that day. So that's how that research influenced the design and brings us on a way away from where we started, farther and farther, and there is no way back, because that would mean, now that I've been producing cars for 20 years and I'm really, really good at it, I know everything about cars now, which I personally don't. Now I have to decide I want to do bikes, and I have to forget everything that I've learned, and I have to start over again. I have to start over again. And that's where the design comes in and changes the research. Because there was a point when I switched around, when I didn't research anymore to find what I want to do. I restarted researching because my design wasn't working, or probably it wasn't the best, and it had to go on, and we wanted to get more clients, and we wanted to have more users and all of that. And I believe that cycle is because of the design process in general. We say there's research, then there is definition, then there is ideation, then there is prototyping, and then there's testing. So what I would like to talk to you about, as soon as I'm done in a couple of minutes, where is the difference between that last part and the first part? Where is the difference between the user test at the end of that cycle or the research at the beginning of that? Because I don't see any. The only thing I see is that on this way from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we forgot why we even started. And so that cycle goes on, and we never get to an end. And that's the thing that we are bringing to companies as well when we're working with our clients. And the loop that, the questions that I've heard being asked to Abby, we have that in our company with the people we're working with too. They're linguists. They're coming from linguistics only. That's where they started. And they never learned the question, why? Why is that? Why did we decide to research it this way? Or why did we decide to design it this way? And they never asked their client they're working with, why did you come up with that solution? What is the reason? Try to explain it to me. And because nobody asked the why, there was no need to research the why. And if there's no need to research a why, then we don't need UX researchers. Then it's enough to have our technical engineers writing some code, implementing what we think is the best for the users, and then start off from there. But that starting point might be a whole different thing than what any user of our clients ever wanted. And that is the shift that is, I believe, is happening right now. But into that shift, we also have to find the difference between what is research and what is testing, and how these two things are absolutely not the same. And that's what I would like to openly talk to you about. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your input. What do the other think about this topic? Like, is the testing, how does it compare to the research at the beginning, like working on the first why and keeping that in mind? We have one feedback in the chat already.
Oh.
Good you're making.
Thank you so much. I hope I do make a good point, because in my company at vui.agency, that's where we started. It was a real cry out, because asking why, that's the change in a company. Asking why means you have to admit that you don't know. And I think the greatest value I see in most of the UX researchers is admitting, I don't have a clue, again and again and again. And that's also the drive of researching, I suppose. I want to know, I need to know. And after I knew, I have to make sure, is it the same input that I'm going to get as I got 5 years ago? So I have to ask me the same questions again. So yeah. Did you all experience the same at your company or while you were researching? I saw a mic open up.
Hi, this is Bengi. I'm not quite sure whether I understand you right or wrong. For me, user research has to do with user goals, with user tasks and subtasks, and of course, everything with the environment which the users are working in. And usability tests are tests. We put them the prototype and tell them, please do this task. And we ask questions, of course. But I'm very interested in user goals. And I was asking my colleagues, if somebody goes to the market and buys a drilling machine, what's his goal? To buy a drilling machine? No, he wants a
hole in the wall.
A hole in the wall. This I would say a year ago. Now I learned it's better. He doesn't want to get to the discussion with his partner because a picture has to be hung on the wall. So he wants to. He doesn't want to argue with his partner. This is his goal. So asking why and asking why. You know, children with 3 or 4 years old, they are the best requirements engineers in the world because they ask why and why and why.
It's my
I don't know.
tool. It's my favorite tool, 5 whys, and I think everyone in my company is fed up with me asking why and why and why again and again. But to get back to your question, why I see a difference there, in our designs, and I believe the research, no matter if it's a research or an idea that sprung into my mind, I have a lot of assumptions. And those assumptions, of course, go into the design. And those design questions and those theses and hypotheses, they go into the testing later on. But what if my design or the product that I'm testing actually gives me no possibility to ask these questions? And what if I would ask these questions and now the users start thinking about them and sees the product, the design that I've done in a whole different way? Like you said, I said, he wants a hole in the wall. Why does he want the wall? Or why does he want a hole in the wall? Why doesn't he use tape, for example? And if you ask that question, you're maybe never going to talk about that drilling again, or maybe not going to talk about how beautiful that picture on that place, on that wall is, or how that person doesn't want to argue with their partner because maybe it's because of that place where that picture is supposed to be. So they're going to argue about, now we got the hole there in that wall because you wanted the picture there. But you know what? If you would have taken tape, we could have just change the position of that picture and it would be over there and I wouldn't have to have the mess on the wall right there. So now in my testing, that user's going to tell me, you know what, I don't want to drill anymore. I'm going to go buy some tape. Bye. And he's gone. I'm not going to have him again. So what do I do with them? Do I change my company now and do I sell tape or do I stick with drills?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could just maybe share 2 points. I think, at least for me, research. So the first one is research goes beyond testing. If you really have that holistic view of where research or specifically UX research goes into the product development cycle, it's there all the time. It has discover, explore, test, lesson. So it determines what is relevant. How do we address the needs? Can we evaluate the design? Once the product is out, keep tracking what's the problem and find new issues. And that feeds back to the sort of iterative process. So I think that we need to distinguish research and only testing. That was my first point. The second point is that I think also research doesn't equal vision. So, right. I think a lot of successful products, especially those startup companies, the product definitely comes from the need, whether they've done market research, whether I don't know where they get their insights from, but they've definitely done the research. They see that there's a need, they develop product, whether that's done with the designers or purely engineering process, but they see the need, they launch the product. But the problem is, once you want to scale it up, how do you decide which direction the product is going? If you happen to be in a very niche industry like Celonis, we're doing very well, but that's not the case for a lot of other startups, right? So research doesn't equal vision. You also need to have a vision for the product. And the research can tell you what the customers need in the iterative process. But in order to have that vision, you also need to have marketing, business, and experience in a way, and a lot of luck.
I love the vision part so much. I'm totally into it. I think it was one of the first things we did at vui. When I started there, we had that creed on the homepage saying, we give your brand a voice. We give your brand a voice. I mean, if that's your title, your secondary title, your subtitle, that counts as a vision. We give your brand a voice. And I was asking, like, how did you get there? And they were like, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're putting voice onto brands, and we're branding the voice. And I was like, is that a vision? Is that something you can compare yourself to? Is there some value in it? And how do you check that you gave the brand a voice? I mean, if I use the Alexa voice, then the brand has a voice. I just have to write down some words that skill says. And nowadays, we create assistants with charisma. It's something we cannot say define. Like we don't know what charisma is. We don't have a clue. We do not have a clue how to do charisma in a voice skill. We do not know how to recreate charisma in a voice skill with TTS voices that sound like that. And hopefully we soon gonna be able to have them more natural. But now we have a vision. We claim we know how to do that, so we finally get there. So every product that we're giving out to our clients now is always checked on, does this help us as a company to do this? To sooner or later be able to stand there and say, we know how to do charismatic assistance. And that's where the vision part that you just mentioned came in, because since then, we're always able to go back to the beginning and say, are we still on track of the vision that this research and the prototype testing and the retesting and the next iteration, are we still on the same vision? But how many companies do you know have a vision and cling to that vision even after the third product cycle?
I think they all have a vision. The problem is whether you agree with it or not.
That too, yes, absolutely. Oh, yes.
I think there needs to be a vision from any C-suite management, but the question is whether you agree with it or not.
True, that's so true. Okay, then let me rephrase. How many companies do you know that have a vision, have 100% employees who stand behind that vision or agree to that vision and are actually working towards that vision? I don't know a lot though. Yeah. And how do you make that vision, if you put it into public? Oh, let me tell you a vision of a company, and maybe you guess which one that is. We want to enable people to get and be in contact at all time from everywhere. Who could that?
We have some guesses here.
We have some guesses there? Oh, no, it's not Zoom. I'm sorry. I am very sorry.
Facebook or WhatsApp.
Meta.
It is Meta. It is. It is Meta. If you look at Meta now, how do you still see that vision? Do they still do that? If you look at where they're going with VR, do you think they are still clinging to it, or are they just making money? I mean, they're making a lot of money. I would like to make that money too, but still, I believe they're still on it, because whatever product they take or put out, they always compare it to their vision. And if it's not belonging to their vision, they just simply don't do it, and they scrape it right away. And you can see another example on this one. The product should be at home. It's the end of the story. It should be at home. We want to make sure that you get your product. Amazon, whatever product they bring and however discussable it is, even cameras on the door, they have it for one purpose only. They want to make sure that the product that you ordered at Amazon is actually at your place without you having to do anything. So they give you also the possibility to put a camera at your door, to put a IoT device on your doorstep. So the DHL can actually open up the door, put the product into your home space and leave, and you still feeling safe. So they actually check in every single thing they do and buy against that vision. But most companies don't. And that's where you really get innovative, if you have a vision and you stick to it and you check yourself again and again to where you came from.
Yeah, true. Maybe one more question to get back a little bit to like the point you mentioned earlier about having the research and testing as like something different, or like a different discipline of research, maybe form it like that. How can we make sure to have like the good balance here? And also like when I guess we can agree that you need to have both and do both. You can't just stick to the one side when you want to develop any product. How can we find a good balance? Or like when we're testing, how can we make sure to also see the bigger picture and also think about the why? What do you think about that?
That's a good question. I believe that vision is a huge part, knowing where you came from and knowing to where you go, because sometimes in the testing, I think if you verify the questions that you're actually asking about the product that you're testing, if they don't help forming and achieving the vision, then maybe it's probably a good question for the product itself, but it can divert the whole company and the whole faith and the whole belief of all your employees into something that is a whole different thing. And it can change mindsets, and suddenly somebody believes in your company, oh, now we're doing weaponry instead of AI. What is happening? What's going on here? Just because there was one question that was not aligned to your vision and to where you came from and where you want to go. And I think that's, for me, something that is really the difference between testing research and the beginning of the research. The beginning of the research, you explore, you see, what do we want? What is the problem that we want to solve, and how do we want to solve it? Is there somebody who solved it before? Is there a solution? Is there a solution maybe coming? Is there a trend that maybe could hint that there will be a solution coming very soon? Like the future research is something that is very hard to do on the product research, but plain research at the beginning of everything, that's what we imagine. Like, how would that look like in 2050, for example? But these are open questions. They don't have a scope yet. But on the product, on the product testing, after the prototyping, or the user testing, on the actual user testing, we often put our questions on the product only and on the prototype only, without seeing ourselves, the vision we had at the beginning within this thing. And I think that's something where you really see the difference between what is research and what is prototype testing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could add a few words on this, because I think we also need to distinguish UX research and the innovative type of research that a lot of large companies are actually doing. because in terms of vision, there is definitely the vision for the product, but there's also innovation, right? So Meta, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they have their product in the business, day-to-day business, but they also have a dedicated research department that does all this industry research, academic research. They publish papers, they look into the future, what could happen in 20, 30, 50 years. BMW, Mercedes also have concept cars that have nothing to do with the cars that they are selling. But so I think we need to distinguish that type of research and the research on the operational level. And in fact, a very common pattern that I see for startups is that once they become successful, they hire a lot of salespeople. They sell. They need to get money. They sell the product. And then at some point they realize that, oh, we also need to innovate. Otherwise, we're behind the market. Then they create an innovation center or however they call it. And then they're bringing all these people doing innovative research. And both actually contribute to the vision.
I must so much agree on that it's a huge part that's often forgotten. On Google's, I've been with Google for a long time, and afterwards with Facebook for a very short time. And both of these visions and all these innovative research they do and have, I think there's one little thing I would add to what you said is, even though it feels so out of product, all this innovative research, I think what makes both of those companies and other companies so successful as well is still in that space out of their own product that they're having or out of their own identity where they do the innovative research. At the beginning of it, it's always the premises, whatever comes out of here, that's going to be an anti-persona of the product we're working with, and we want to check our product against whatever you found. So if our product is still valuable against what you found, because it's so outside of what we did. But here again, there is a fine line between what is it then? Like the product of that research, is that still research, or is it part of the product cycle research where you go against the product that you're actually working with? The line is very, very fine. And yeah, I must agree. It's hard, you have to distinguish it, but I also believe you can't go without one and the other.
Yeah. And I think long-term wise, it probably doesn't really matter, because if you look back into history, the first spreadsheet was invented in 1979. It got into the product in the 80s, and now everyone is using it. And the first mouse was invented in the 60s, and we're still using it. Or so if you look at the invention that eventually goes into innovation, which eventually turns into product, there's just this timeline that is there.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Cool, thank you so much for this discussion and also sharing your thoughts on this, Abby, as well. Do we have more questions here?
So Abby, I want to get back on this mouse. You know, what I always think when we talk about innovation, do you think that the mouse innovator just followed his vision, or did he backed it by research first? Because I sometimes feel when you work on cutting edge technology, something we haven't done before, you know, that juggles with a lot of variables, I would say the regular user, we want to introduce that later too, can't even understand the complexity. You know, sometimes that's what I like when you say it's more of sometimes exploring than research, because sometimes you have to try things very, very hard, and it might take some time until it gets adopted. So, you know, I sometimes also think you can research things to death, because you don't find that user in your little spreadsheet that you can connect, you know, that will tell you, yeah, I need that. Because I don't know if people in the 80s would say, I need a smartphone to find the next diner in New York, you know.
Yeah, I think we also need to, I agree a lot of, in fact, if you look at, well, sorry, I'm going back to the history of human-computer interaction again. If you look back in time, a lot of the things that we're using today were really invented in the 60s, 70s, and they actually had more capabilities than the ones that we have today, because they were designed by the quote unquote expert for the expert. But the product today, we need to take into account that there are different types of users with different levels of expertise. And if you want to develop a product for average user, it depends on who you are targeting, right? If the product is designed at expert user, they can be super fancy. I don't know if any of you have used Max MSP. It's a visual programming language to process sound and audio and image. It's crazy because it's developed by the musicians for the musicians. And the interface is so complex that regular users just don't know where even to get started. But the musicians know, because that's their regular job. And obviously spreadsheets were supposed to be for everyone, but the creative people also appropriated. They created games in it. They did drawing in there. So there's definitely this sort of two sides interaction, how I see it. They're those who invent, innovate, develop either products or software, however you'd like to call it, for the users. But those users who have creativity, and we all have creativity, have imagination, have their needs, which are not part of the product roadmap, they also appropriate it. So I think that's also the interesting part. That's why research is not only about, okay, we have the need, let's see what's the need, we test the product, but also getting into contact with the users, see how they're actually using the product, and they always surprise you.
Yes, I can agree with that. Cool, thank you so much. Special thanks to Ray Allen and to Abby